let's go ahead and get started. So we're gonna pray. God, we thank you again for this time together. We ask that you would again open our hearts to receive what your Holy Spirit would have to say to us tonight. Help us to learn from each other and to learn from you as we dive back into your word in the story of Samuel and Saul here tonight. And teach us how you would have us to follow your ways and to live out your commandments, to love you and to love our neighbors. We ask that you would bless this time together and bless our conversation. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So we did chapters 7 and 8 last time, which was just sort of a brief recounting of Samuel's leadership over the people of Israel, and then their ask to have a king. Samuel's hesitation with that. So now we're on to chapter 9, and this is the story of how Saul becomes king in 3 parts. So we're going to start then. I want to break this up. Let's do chapter 9, verses 1 through. I would have figured this out before now. 1 through 14. Somebody read that for us.
Now there was a man of Benjamin, whose name was Kish, the son of Abiel, the son of Zeror, the son of Bekorth, the son of Alphiah, the son of a Benjamite, and a mighty man of valor. And he had a son whose name was Saul, a choice and handsome man, and there was none a more handsome person than he among the sons of Israel. From his shoulders and up, he was taller than any of the people. Now the donkeys of Kish, Saul's father, were lost. So Kish said to his son Saul, "Take now with you one of the servants and arise and go search for the donkeys." And he passed through the hill country of Ephraim and passed through the land of Shalishah, but they did not find him. Then they passed through the land of Shillim, but they were not there. Then he passed through the land of Benjamites, but they did not find him. When they came to the land of Zup, Saul said to his servants who was with him, "Come and let us return, lest my father ceases to be concerned about the donkeys and becomes anxious for us." And he said to him, "Behold, now there is a man of God in this city, and the man is held in honor, and all that he says surely comes true. Now let us go there. Perhaps he can tell us about the journey on which we have set out." Then Saul said to his servant, "But behold, if we go, what shall we bring the man? For the bread is gone from our sack, and there is no presents to bring to the man of God. What do we have?" And the servant answered Saul again and said, "Behold, I have in my hand 1/4 of a shekel of silver. I will give it to the man of God, and he will tell us our way." Formerly in Israel, when a man went to inquire of God, he used to say, "Come and let us go to the seer." For he who is called a prophet now is formerly called a seer. Then Saul said to his servant, "Well said, come, let us go." So they went to the city where the man of God was. And they went up the slope to the city. They found young women going out to draw water and said to them, "Is the seer near?" And they answered him and said, "He is. See, he is ahead of you. Hurry now, for he has come into the city today. For the people have a sacrifice on the high place today. As soon as you enter the city, you will find him before he goes up to the high place to eat. for the people will not eat until he comes, because he must bless the sacrifice. Afterwards, those who are invited will eat. Now, therefore, go up, for you will find him at once. So they went up to the city. As they came to the city, behold, Samuel was coming out toward them to go to the high place.
Thank you. Will somebody pick up at verse 15? Through the end of chapter 9?
Now, the day before Saul came, the Lord had revealed this to Samuel. About this time tomorrow, I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin. Anoint him leader over my people Israel. He will deliver my people from the hand of the Philistines. I have looked upon my people, for their cry has reached me. When Samuel caught sight of Saul, the Lord said to him, This is the man I spoke to you about. He will govern my people. Saul approached Samuel in the gateway and asked, Would you please tell me where the seer's house is? I am the seer, Samuel said. Go up ahead of me to the high place, for today you are to eat with me, and in the morning I will let you go and will tell you all that is in your heart. As for the donkeys you lost 3 days ago, do not worry about them. They have been found. And to whom is all the desire of Israel turned, if not to you and all your father's family? Saul answered, But I am not a Benjaminite, from the smallest tribe of Israel, and is not my clan the least of all the clans of the tribe of Benjamin? Why do you say such a thing to me? Then Samuel brought Saul and his servant into the hall and seated them at the head of those who were invited, about 30 in number. Samuel said to the cook, Bring the piece of meat I gave you, the one I told you to lay aside. So the cook took up the leg with what was on it and set it in front of Saul. Samuel said, Here is what has been kept for you. Eat, because it was set aside for you for this occasion, from the time I said I have invited guests. And Saul dined with Samuel that day. After they came down from the high place to the town, Samuel talked with Saul on the roof of his house. They rose about daybreak, and Samuel called to Saul on the roof, Get ready, and I will send you on your way. When Saul got ready, he and Samuel went outside together. As they were going down to the edge of the town, Samuel said to Saul, Tell the servant to go on ahead of us. And the servant did so. But you stay here a while, so that I may give you a message from God.
Thank you. And then one more. Can you read chapter 10, verses 1 through 16? And then we'll be done.
And Samuel took a vial of oil and poured it on his head, and kissed him and said, Has not the Lord anointed you to be prince over his people, Israel? And you shall reign over the people of the Lord, and you shall save them from the hand of their enemies round us. And this shall be the sign to you that the Lord has anointed you to be prince over his heritage. When you depart from me today, you will meet 2 men by Rachel's tomb in the territory of Benjamin at Zelzah, and they will say to you, The asses which you went to seek are found, and now your father has ceased to care about the asses and is anxious about you, saying, What shall I do about my son? Then you shall go on from there further and come to the oak of Tabor. 3 men going up to God at Bethel will meet you there, one carrying 3 kids, another carrying 3 loaves of bread, and another carrying a skin of wine. And they will greet you and give you 2 loaves of bread, which you shall accept from their hand. After that, you shall come to
Gideon Elohim.
Say that again?
Gideon Elohim.
I'll never get that. Where there is a garrison of the Philistines. And there, as you come to the city, you will meet a band of prophets coming down from the high place with harp, tambourine, flute, and lyre before them, prophesying. Then the Spirit of the Lord will come mightily upon you, and you shall prophesy with them and be turned into another man. Now, when these signs meet you, do whatever your hand finds to do, for God is with you. And you shall go down before me to Gilgal, and behold, I am coming to you to offer burnt offerings and to sacrifice peace offerings. 7 days you shall wait until I come to you and show you what you shall do. When he turned his back to leave Samuel, God gave him another heart, and all these signs came to pass that day. When they came to Gibeah, and behold, a band of prophets met him, and the Spirit of God came mightily upon him, and he prophesied among them. And when all who knew before saw how he prophesied with the prophets, the people said to one another, "What has come over the son of Kish? Is Saul also among the prophets?" And a man of the place answered, "And who is their father?" Therefore it became a proverb, "Is Saul among the prophets?" When he had finished prophesying, he came to the high place. Saul's uncle said to him and to his servant, "Where did you go?" And he said, "To seek the asses, and when we saw they were not to be found, we went to Samuel." I forgot where you said.
16.
Thank you. And Saul's uncle said, "Pray, tell me what Samuel said to you." And Saul said to his uncle, "He told us plainly that the asses had been found. But about the matter of the kingdom of which Samuel had spoken, he did not tell him anything."
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Okay. So part one of Saul becoming king is this very, very long call story and anointing. So parts 2 and 3 are much shorter, but this one was quite the story. So before we get into it, are there any clarifying questions about anything in the story? Anything that didn't make sense or that you had a question about? Other than all of the hard to pronounce names.
What do you think when he says he was prophesizing over and over again? So what actually was happening? Were they like speaking in tongues, or were they?
Yeah, I took that to mean an ecstatic spiritual experience. Seminary, we talked about spiritual experiences that one might have, and on opposite ends of the spectrum are you have the meditative experience, which is where you are so completely inert, both in mind and body, that you find union with God. And then ecstatic experiences, which you can have in a secular way too, like when you go to a concert and it's really high energy, or when you see those, or when you go to a revival or something like that, or when you see those church services where they're shaking and speaking in tongues and all that kind of stuff. I don't know exactly what this was, but when it says that, I take it to mean that sort of experience. It says prophetic frenzy. So what do you make of this story, Saul? What do you make of Saul in this story?
Saul's kind of he's kind of depicted as somebody who's not the brightest bulb on the string of Christmas movies. And the way I look at it, because he asked, and he said, "What should we do here?" And the servant said, "Well, we'll go and there's a holy man here. We'll go and see them. And we don't have anything to give him." The servant's leading him along and taking care of things for him. And of course, later on, we haven't got to it yet, but Saul hides out a little bit. But the commentary that I had here said that you kind of look at him and says, "Is this the guy that's going to be king? And does he have all the qualifications for doing that?" But it's
He obviously did. God chose him.
God chose him. And it goes back to, the song that Hannah had back at the beginning of, second chapter of Samuel. And verses 7 and 8, the Lord makes poor and rich. He brings low, he also exalts. He raises the poor from the dust, and he lifts the needy from the ash heap. Make them all sit with nobles. And it kind of backs up that song that she sang when Samuel was born. Or it's an example of that in verse 21. Saul says, am I not a Benjaminite? Why are you doing this to me? Who am I? I'm nothing. I'm nobody.
Seems to be a recurring theme. And
Yeah.
The people that are chosen.
Well, I think
often-
Moses was that way.
I think there's a good message in there.
Mhm.
That works well.
It's also too, I think that Samuel's place is starting to wane and Saul's is starting to come about. The torch is being passed.
It's interesting, looking at this story and then thinking, when he was hunting David and it sounded like he doesn't sound like the same guy.
Mhm.
I mean, he morphs into something else along the way.
Mhm.
And Saul ends up, he has troubles.
One thing my commentary pointed out that I hadn't thought of before is that the elders in the previous chapter had come to Samuel asking for a king.
Mhm.
And you kind of think, well, did they have somebody in mind? Were they kind of, it said, he said something about like the political machinations, the like behind the scenes, they were, working out deals with each other or you have to imagine, right, that maybe they were trying to figure out who they wanted to put in power. God said, I'll let him have a king, but I'm gonna pick him.
Of course, nothing like that ever happens today.
Yeah.
Or picked ahead of time. Yeah.
Thought that was an interesting point. He's just off on this errand, this innocuous errand, looking for the donkeys.
Yeah.
Or I like that your translation said the asses that he's looking for. No.
I like where yours named that big city and mine just says up on the hill.
The hill of God, yeah.
You could spell it either, so you just put the hill.
Like your translation that said that above the shoulders, he was taller than other people.
Yeah.
It's like the horse walks in the bar, why the long face?
And all of a sudden he gets pulled aside and says, "You're gonna be king."
Yeah.
I mean,
He says,
how would you react? Or I had this question here for us. Have you ever gone on an innocuous errand or quest of some sort, or undertaken some sort of, or even just been living your daily life and then just out of the blue received this momentous call to do something?
Is that kind of like not attending the meeting and get elected president? You come back, so by the way, I think that's how they should do.
You weren't here, so we decided you could be in charge.
Just kind of being pulled up on the stage and being told you're in charge now. That didn't happen to me at all. What do you think about that?
I can't say that's ever happened to me. I mean, I've always kind of knew what the fire looked like when I was jumping out of the frying pan. But,
How do you imagine Saul? It doesn't really say much about how he reacted or how he responded to that. I mean, he did what he was told. But he doesn't really respond,
He pushed back a little.
other than,
Yeah.
well, at the beginning, yeah.
Who am I? We're the least of the tribes, and we're the least of the family of the least of the tribes.
Yeah.
verse 21, yeah.
Yeah, there before he gets when he's invited to dinner.
Well, he's just he was a nobody. It reminds me of what was it? There was a television show, Survivor, and everybody in Congress and the president and everybody's meeting on the hill. They dropped a bomb on it. And of course, there's always one guy that they have to hold aside somewhere in the safe pin in case something happens. And this poor guy, it was the Secretary of Housing or something else, and now he's the president. Because they're all gone. Who said, "Who, me? Who am I? I'm just nobody."
He was tall and pretty, though,
That's true.
or
All
handsome.
all the stories talk about how tall he was. Oh, he was so tall.
Look out, Larry.
Larry, you're
Yeah.
a leader. Miles to the leader. Have you ever been, here's another question. Have you ever been called to something you felt absolutely unqualified for? How did that go?
I went to breakfast with a fella that I know who had helped out in the shrine, different thing. And I said, "What do you want me to do, Gary?" And he said, "I want you to start the officer's line." I said, "Oh man, you want the whole enchilada?" I said, I can't say yes or even entertain the idea until I talk to Carol, because if she's not on board, it's not gonna work. And I told her, I said, if I say yes, our lives belong to the temple for the next 8 years.
And they did.
Yeah, we'll be involved with all kinds of stuff. And it's a big deal. But, it worked out. And I think sometimes people that are more reluctant to take on a job are the ones you want. Because I think they realize the responsibility that goes with it. Whereas if you get and they told me, they said, "You're going to appoint somebody and you're going to have people that'll come up to you and say, 'Boy, if you need an appointment, I'm right here.' They're too anxious." Beware of those people.
Well, Saul wasn't too anxious.
Absolutely not. And then it says that in chapter 10, verse 9, that God gave him another heart. What does it mean to receive a different heart? What do you think it means?
He opened his heart. He made him receptive. And then it says, and all those signs came about on that day. He experienced all those things that Saul, or that Samuel said he would.
Have you ever felt like that? Has that ever happened to you? Or seeing a different heart? I feel like it happened to me. I'm not saying it's not impossible. Like between, as I was growing up, I guess.
I think for me as somebody who went into medicine, I think a lot of people go into it with this naive idea that you know, cure everybody and then make everybody better. Or I think that's what you go into it thinking. And graduating medical school, you're all excited. I mean, this is what I really wanted to do. And then you get in there and it's very eye-opening. I think getting put into a situation where you're not prepared, your internship is absolutely a situation where you were not prepared for that, despite having the MD degree. And being in that hospital and working every day is not being prepared, but you learn from that. And then I think as you go along further in your career, you realize that your job is not necessarily to make people live longer or, but it becomes more of a quality of life issue. And I think over time, my heart has changed because what I do for people is different. And maybe it's not, that I'm going to cure everybody or every story is going to have a happy ending, but it's my interaction in their life is different. And I think that is probably where, God led me to that path and this is what I'm supposed to do. But definitely along the way, there were many situations where I turned to him and he changed me along the way. So I do think that is my heart changed throughout the 20 years I've been doing this.
For me, it was probably my divorce. We had 3 kids, and I ended up getting full custody of them, and was raising them myself for about 4.5 years, and met Janine. And my heart really got changed by that. I wasn't going to church. I wasn't doing any of that stuff. Although I've been raised that way, and she came into our life and she helped me raise the kids. And I think that's for me. If my heart changed, it was when that happened.
I think it's funny, interesting that Saul doesn't mention anything about this whole king business to his uncle. He just says, he said that the donkeys have been found. Doesn't say anything about the kingship at all.
I think he was in denial at the point where they couldn't believe that it was actually happening.
Maybe, yeah.
It'd be hard to believe. I mean, you're wandering around looking for some donkeys. Somebody decides to tell you you're going to be king.
Yeah.
Very odd.
Might give us a little insight to his personality too. He wasn't out bragging about it.
That's right. He wasn't, yeah. The Saul at the beginning, when we first meet him, does seem to be very different from the Saul most of us kind of know from what we know of the David story and the Saul of later on. We'll get there later on in the story. But he does become, it's almost like that, that whole absolute power corrupts absolutely.
That's what I was thinking. Power which
Almost
we
like
have.
that, it has some truth in it, right?
According to my book here, in verse 17 and 9, chapter 9, when Samuel saw, the Lord said to him, "Behold the man whom I spoke to you. This one shall rule over my people." Saul didn't really, or Samuel didn't know who he was looking for. He just said,
Right.
the Lord said, "About this time tomorrow, I will send a man from the land of Benjamin, and you shall anoint him." And so they meet by all these happenstance. Of course, it's all guided by God. And then as he comes out and he sees Saul, the Lord said, "That's the man right there."
The the word, this is interesting. I'll share this with you guys. The word used for what he is making Saul, the Lord has anointed you ruler over his people Israel. The word used there for ruler is not melech, which means king. It's nagid, which roughly translated means the made known one or the designated one. This is the one whom God has designated to be the ruler over Israel. So you're right. It wasn't somebody that Samuel picked. It wasn't somebody that the elders picked. This was specifically somebody who God picked. I just think it's important to note that this is somebody who God picked, and then later on, God rejected him and picked somebody else because of the way that he was.
God still gave him free reign. Proved that he wasn't worthy of God's appointment in the end.
I guess it's just to say that, maybe we should never be completely sure of ourselves, that it's not like once we've got it right, we're good for the rest of the time. That we just, every day we got to make sure that we're paying attention to what God wants us to do.
It made me think of the hymn, Have Thine Own Way, right? I mean, it was sort of like, at this point, Saul was sort of like clay, right?
Mhm.
And he could have become a great leader, and what God's plan was for him. I mean, I think because he does, just very sort of naive and but accepting of this, and I think could have been a great leader and followed God and God's plan, and then instead sort of went off the path that God had planned for him. So that was just what I thought when I was reading this. And then it also made me compare to Samuel,
Mhm.
because I think I know the story is really more about Saul, but you look at what Samuel did, and um, you know, accepting of the fact that things were changing, his sons were not going to be the leaders, and then to do this. I mean, I think that takes a lot of courage to say, I'm going to pick Saul and just go along with this. I mean,
Yeah.
you think about it, how hard that would be for a lot of people to say, I'm going to go along with this plan God has for me. I mean, I think we've talked about it before, how it's easy to say, why is this happening, or trying to understand the plan. So just thinking about how Saul accepted what God's plan was
Mhm.
and went along with it.
Any other comments on this first part, chapter 9 and 10 through verse 16? Sort of, we've got it'll become kind of obvious as we go along, but we've sort of got three different stories of how Saul became king in here between chapters 9 and 11. Kind of liken it to kind of like the four gospels. There's different tellings of the story of Jesus, as people remember it, right? But they all have their own message for us to hear. And they all basically say the same thing, but just with different words. So
That leading up to Jesus was pretty much a nondescript person that came into the world, that as an average person that became the king.
yeah, you could see it that way for sure. going along with the theme of somebody from humble beginnings.
Well, and, you know, Samuel's sons that didn't follow through, they became treacherous. And typically we always think that, well, the king and the firstborn son will inherit the throne and so forth, and they're not always in God's will. Does what we think should happen is going to happen in terms of that sort of thing.
Our next section is a short one. If you were looking for something short to read, now's your chance. It's verses, so we're chapter 10, verses 17 through 27.
I'll read it. And there's a reason why I want to read it, because I've got an extra little bit at the end of it that Bill didn't have in his Bible.
Oh, can you,
Do you not want me to read that?
that goes with the next section.
Okay.
Yes, so do you want to wait for the next section to read that? Okay. So somebody read until, see, verse 27, they despised him, but brought no gifts, but Saul held his peace or kept silent.
And Samuel called the people together unto the Lord of Mizpah, and said unto the children of Israel, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I brought up Israel out of Egypt, and delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, and out of the hand of all kingdoms, and of them that oppressed you. And ye have this day rejected your God, who himself saved you out of all your adversities and your tribulations. And you have said unto him, Nay, but set a king over us. Now therefore present yourselves before the Lord by your tribes and by your thousands. And when Samuel had caused all the tribes of Israel to come near, the tribe of Benjamin was taken. When he had caused the tribe of Benjamin to come near by their families, the family of Matri was taken, and Saul the son of Kish was taken, and when they sought him, he could not be found. Therefore they inquired of the Lord further, if the man should yet come thither. And the Lord answered, Behold, he hath hid himself among the stuff. And they ran and fetched him thence. And when he stood among the people, he was higher than any of the people from his shoulders and upward. And Samuel said to all the people, See ye him whom the Lord hath chosen, and there is none like him among all the people. And all the people shouted and said, God save the king. Then Samuel told the people the manner of the kingdom, and wrote it in the book, and laid it up before the Lord. And Samuel sent all the people away, every man to his house. And Saul also went home to Gibeah, and there went with him a band of men whose hearts God had touched. But the children of Belial said, How shall this man save us? And they despised him and brought him no presents, but he held his peace.
Thank you. So part 2, where Saul is chosen by Lot. Not the man, but by chance, to be king.
I don't understand that because he was chosen by Lot. Who cast Lot? He was chosen by God.
He was chosen by God. But in this story, he's chosen by Lot.
You're supposed to have this answer. That's what we paid.
Well, at that time, they did believe that the person who was chosen by Lot was chosen by God. That's the same thing. Although, my commentary points out the other times they use lots were to choose, who had disrespected God and deserved to be punished. And, you know, I kind of feel like if it came down to the wire between me and somebody else, I'd kind of be like, hey, what's going on here? You know, you're throwing the dice to see whether or not I'm the one that has to be executed. But you know, this was one of the ways that they determined what God's choice was back then. So.
I knew they'd have family meetings, and if they had an issue that they stuck on, they drew lots, and they said that was, you know, from the Bible. It's
Anybody ever draw straws?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
not for anything spiritual.
Or picking who's going to be king or president.
Yeah.
The Amish,
Rock, paper, scissors, all that sort of
the Amish choose their church or religious leaders it's by a lot process. And if
Interesting.
there are people that have declined it and then they're told to leave the order.
Mm.
I have some close friends that are in the connection, and they're wonderful people, and most everybody takes that on as a blessing. Beautiful thing.
Really, when you stop and think about it, voting is a form of
Casting a lot.
casting lots.
I kind of think it's more of a popularity contest. but-
Well, whatever, but I mean, yeah, but it's,
I've wondered if, you know, picking, I'm not saying we should do this, but if it was more like a jury selection process where it was seen more as a civic duty to be chosen. But obviously, we need to make sure that people are qualified, know what they're talking about, know what they're doing, to be our leaders. But I think if there was some way for it to be seen more as a civic duty, like, you know, where you're chosen to be jury duty rather than, I don't know. It's like you said, Bill, you know, sometimes, you know, people who are too eager to be that person,
winner.
you know, yeah. Versus somebody who, George Washington didn't want it,
No.
you know, and they talked him into it. And so, but yeah, and here, speaking of not wanting it, Saul's hiding in the baggage, like he doesn't want it either.
In verse 27, my Bible says, but certain worthless men, and I think
Yes.
what was said, what was read?
But the children of Belial, Belial.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the Hebrew word is yeah, Belial.
Yeah, I've got a sons of that. I got a notation of that.
White translation says troublemakers.
Trouble.
Mine says despicable,
Yeah,
Despicables.
despicable people.
kind of, it means all of that, you know, basically yeah, it was also the same word that was used to describe Eli's sons in chapter 2.
No, that's right.
The word usually indicated the most undesirable people in Israel. But
Well, mine, for Eli's son said despicable also, so
Well,
they translated it the same here.
yeah, literally sons of Eli or whatever that. Interesting. He must have been.
so my commentary goes on to say, we should remember that Eli mistook Hannah for Belial in chapter 1, verses 14 through 16. Later, when David gathers men around him in the wilderness, his support comes from the discontented and outcasts of Israel. In the story of 1 Samuel, true power comes from God, and its form in the life of Israel does not always follow the usual patterns of human power and privilege, which is what you said, Bill. The elders may demand a king, but God will choose an inexperienced boy. The men of power may collect around the newly acclaimed Saul, but the worthless ones may have the final word as they later gather around a fugitive David. Indeed, the worthless ones may voice the crucial question at this point in the story. Can Saul save? Question worth asking. Because all the people that, or not all the people, clearly not all the people in Israel, right? But the elders and a lot of the people were saying, we need a king to save us from the Philistines. We need a king. And look at the beginning of this passage that we just read, where God is saying, Samuel says to them, this is what God says, I'm the one who has rescued you. I have been your salvation this whole time. I brought you out of Egypt. Remember, the Philistines were saying this earlier about God. Isn't this the God that brought them out of Egypt? And I have rescued you from the hand of all the what?
Kingdoms.
Kingdoms that were oppressing you. But now you want a king for yourself. Then he says, okay, I'll give you a king.
Wow.
But
The people, when they looked at Jesus, were looking for an earthly king.
military.
The Romans, and when they took him before Pilate, but Caiaphas or one of them said, we have no king but Caesar.
Mhm.
Same thing.
Mhm.
This is the forerunner of all that. They were looking for some other kind of king.
But he was really tall.
Head and shoulders above
He was-
everyone
he
else.
was really tall.
He was the shoulder.
Head and shoulders.
He could wear.
But-
You ever feel head and shoulders above others?
In Japan. Not in Sweden, no.
No, they're tall there.
Could some of the animosity from the those folks be because he's from the Benjamite group and then the smallest tribe, and his clan is the least of all the clans in the tribe of Benjamite. So again, he's not from an important group. He's a lesser person in the eyes of other tribes and clans, and yet he's the one that's raised up to be king or selected to be king.
Certainly could be. It reminds you of the, folks in the gospel saying, can anything good come from Nazareth?
Right.
About
Right.
Jesus, yeah.
It kind of reminds you of what good came out of Nazareth.
Right, yeah.
Could anything good come out of Nazareth?
Samuel makes a reference here to the rights and duties of kingship, that he wrote them down in the book. And my commentary points to Deuteronomy chapter 17. Whether this is what is meant or not, I don't know. But Deuteronomy 17, verses 14 through 20, says, when you have come into the land that the Lord God, your God is giving you, and have taken possession of it and settled in it, and you say, I will set a king over me, like all the nations that are around me, you may indeed set over you a king whom the Lord your God will choose. One of your own community you may set as king over you. You are not permitted to put a foreigner over you who is not of your own community. Even so, he must not acquire many horses for himself, or return the people to Egypt in order to acquire more horses, since the Lord has said to you, you must never return that way again. And he must not acquire many wives for himself, or else his heart will turn away. Solomon. Also, silver and gold he must not acquire in great quantity for himself. When he has taken the throne of his kingdom, he shall have a copy of this law written for him in the presence of the Levitical priests. It shall remain with him, and he shall read in it all the days of his life, so that he may learn to fear the Lord his God, diligently observing all the words of this law and these statutes, neither exalting himself above other members of the community, nor turning aside from the commandment either to the right or to the left, so that he and his descendants may reign long over his kingdom in Israel. Anything else on this section about drawing lots for Saul? Anybody had? I'll also note that Mizpah make sure that I don't activate your
I'm sorry. I'm
your thing
trying-
again.
They started bell stuff here and I
Oh,
forgot
yeah.
to turn the phone off.
Okay.
Sorry, now I can't get to go.
Oh, yeah, it happens. Um,
Sorry.
Get a bigger hand.
can't hold your button to turn it on.
I used to be able to do that. Now it won't do that and it's puts up an AI screen, Ask Gemini, and I don't know what happened, why it won't.
That's
It
really-
goes to a button secondary after that, but the first time. So I don't know what happened. I don't know if I did it or if it's just some AI thing. I have no idea.
It's taken over.
It is.
It feels that way to me sometimes.
Remember that old movie Colossus where the computer takes over the world?
Mizpah is the place from chapter 7 where Samuel had gathered everybody and the Philistines had come and they tried to attack them. And what
Mhm.
happened? Samuel called upon God and God delivered them from the Philistines. God showed up and routed the Philistines with the thunder, right? And so they didn't need a king the last time they were at Mizpah. They had God to protect them from the Philistines. And so there's still that rock, that Ebenezer that he'd set up there. I wonder if they could see it while they were all gathered there at Mizpah. But he gathered them there and that's where they chose Saul to be king by lots. I think that was kind of ironic.
Yeah.
It's like the people are just forgetting what God has done for them. They want to be in control of their own situation. They want to have their own king, determine their own future. So. Well, then we have our final section. So Carol, you want to read and just go on to the end of chapter 11 there.
Okay. See if anybody else has this first little part.
Mhm.
Nahash, the Ammonite king, had been severely oppressing the Gittites and the Benjamites, or no, excuse me, the Reubenites. He gouged out everyone's right eye, thereby not allowing Israel to have a deliverer. There wasn't a single Israelite left across the Jordan River who hadn't had their right eye gouged out by the Ammonite king Nahash. But 7,000 people had escaped from the Amorites' power and fled to Jabesh Gilead. Now we'll start with verse 1. About a month later, Nahash the Ammonite went up and laid siege to Jabesh Gilead, and the men of Jabesh and to Nahash, make a treaty with us and we'll be your servants. I will make a treaty with you on one condition, that everyone's right eye be gouged out. Nahash the Ammonite said to them, that's how I bring humiliation on all Israel. The elders of Jabesh replied to him, leave us alone for 7 days so we can send messengers throughout Israel's territory. If there's no one to save us, then we'll surrender to you. When the messengers reached Gibesh, where Saul lived, they reported the news directly to the people there. Then they all wept aloud. At just that moment, Saul was coming back from keeping the cattle in the fields. What's wrong with everybody? He asked. Why are they crying? Saul was then told what the men from Jabesh had said. God's spirit came over Saul when he heard those words, and he burned with anger. He took 2 oxen, cut them into pieces, and sent them by messengers throughout Israel's territory. This is exactly what will be done to the oxen of anyone who doesn't come to the aid of Saul and Samuel, he said. Great fear of the Lord came over the people, and they came to Saul completely unified. When Saul counted them at Bezek, the soldiers from Israel totaled 300,000, and those from Judah 30,000. The messengers who had come with them told, say this to the people of Jabesh Gilead. Tomorrow, by the time the sun is hot, you will be saved. When the messengers returned and reported this to the people of Jabesh, they were overjoyed. Then the people of Jabesh told the Ammonites, we will surrender to you tomorrow. Then you can do whatever you want to us. The next day, Saul organized his troops into 3 formations. They attacked the Ammonite camp during the morning watch and slaughtered them until the heat of the day. The survivors were so scattered that not even 2 of them could be found together. Then people asked Saul, who was it who said, will Saul rule over us? Give us those people. We'll kill them. But Saul said, no one will be executed because today the Lord has saved Israel. Let's go to Gilgal. Samuel told the people and renew the monarchy there. So everyone went to Gilgal, and there at Gilgal they made Saul king in the Lord's presence. They offered well-being sacrifices in the Lord's presence, and Saul and all the Israelites held a great celebration there.
God, thank you. All right, so that little extra piece comes from one of the scrolls found at Qumran.
Yeah, that's what mine says at the bottom.
And so it's not in, the manuscripts that we had for, the longest time that were being used to produce the different translations. So some translations now have chosen to add in that little bit because it gives a little bit of extra context.
Yeah, it does, for why he wanted to gouge out the eyes of the Israelites. Because that's the thing he did. They have command.
So the kingdom of Ammon, the Ammonites, was on the eastern side of the Jordan River. And that was also where the territory of Gad and Reuben, those 2 tribes, that's where that was. And so they were in contention with each other. And evidently this King Nahash guy, his name means snake, by the way, is trying to assert dominance over the region, and in doing so, he's gouging everybody's eye out because you only have one eye, you can't fight so well, I guess. So there's less of a chance of people rebelling against him. So
If you're an archer and predominantly people are right-handed,
yeah,
it would eliminate your ability to be an archer.
so so that's probably why. But yeah, so here we have a third option for how Saul became king. He becomes king 3 times throughout this. Some scholars think that maybe these are 3 different traditions on how he became king that were passed down, and then were eventually woven together into this big long narrative. They each have different things that they say about Saul and how he became king. But the important thing to note is that God is instrumental in every single one of these stories. God is the one who chose Saul and pointed him out to Samuel in the first story. God is the one who uses the lots to determine the outcome in the Old Testament. And so God is the one who chooses Saul in the second story. And here in the third story, what happens?
Well, Saul doesn't run away and hide this time. Instead, he acts like a leader.
Right. Yes. And also specifically in verse 6, the Spirit of God came upon him. when he hears about the injustice in Jabesh Gilead, the Spirit of God came upon Saul in power, and his anger was kindled.
And that kind of goes with, he got a new heart.
Yeah, yeah. He's not just caring about himself and his family and his tribe, but he gets this passion to care about these other people over here that are in distress.
A weird way to send a message. Oh,
So there's a connection here. Yes. There's a connection here with a story in Judges that I think is just one of the most awful in terms of gory and whatnot stories in the Bible, but there is a Levite who is an Ephraimite, and he has a concubine, and that concubine, some people from Saul's town, from Gibeah. This is before Saul. This is, many generations before. They sexually assault her to the point that she dies. I mean, it's brutal. And so afterwards, the Levite, don't ask me why he does this. I guess this was a thing that they did. But he cuts her body into 12 parts and sends each part to the different tribes of Israel to say, this is what the Benjaminites, the people of Gibeah did. And it gets all of Israel to then unite against the people of Gibeah, the Benjaminites, and they go in and they exact retribution. But there are a few people left, and they decide not to kill everybody because they don't want to wipe out the tribe of Benjamin because they're still Israelites. And so they say, what are we going to do to make sure that they can continue on as a people? Because there's only a handful of men left. And the people of Jabesh Gilead had refused to go up against the people of Gibeah in that whole fight. And so the rest of Israel say, we're going to take women from Jabesh Gilead as punishment for them not joining in, and give them to the Benjaminites in Gibeah so that they can rebuild their population. So there's a connection between that story, which again is just it's a really, really tough, awful story, I think. And this story, because there's some kinship connection between the people of Jabesh Gilead and the people of Gibeah. Their family, basically. And so the cutting up of the oxen and sending it to all those different parts actually recalls that story from Judges.
It says in 7, then the dread of the Lord fell on the people and they came out as one man.
Mm-hmm.
But if Saul did this, sent the oxen parts out, seems like the dread of the dread of Saul fell on the people. The Lord saw, I mean, is it meaning the same thing there? Or?
Mine says they came to Saul completely unified.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
It does say the dread of the Lord fell upon the people. And they came out as one.
Maybe
or, yeah,
the message, thus says the Lord, if you don't, well, of course you'd think they would say that. Whoever does not come out after Saul and after Samuel, so shall it be done to his oxen, which would be like, we're going to take your tractor away from you.
Yeah, it could also just be a way, a phrase, a saying, an idiom that we don't fully understand, but a way of saying the people felt convicted to come out.
Hmm. All I can say is Kingship has come a long way, because I can't imagine Charles being out in the field tending the cattle.
That's a
That-
good point, you know.
I don't think he ever.
Yeah.
Go out there and get class.
The
It's curious about why they in verse 8, why they gave the numbers of the men from Israel and a different number from the men from Judah.
it's good. That's a good observation.
If they weren't divided into,
They weren't divided yet. Interesting.
There's some agreement. I say there's some agreement. People are divided, as they always are, over when this was written. But there is some agreement that this would have been written after the division of the kingdoms. And so just like the author has a note back in chapter 9, back in those days, people would say, let us go see the seer, because a prophet was formerly called a seer. They're explaining that for their contemporary reader. They're probably delineating between Israel and Judah, because their contemporary reader, there's the split kingdom of Israel, and there's the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. And, you know, the other thing to remember is we have to remember is that these stories were transmitted over generations. They were written down they did not view scripture in the same way that we do, in terms of you can't add anything to it, you can't take away anything from it. So it may have been, I mean, they would have edited it so that people would understand, so that it would make sense. So even if the story was first written down in like 900 or whatever, you know, as time went on and they were copying the scrolls and rewriting the story, they could have updated it to reflect, you know, the new time period. So, I mean, it's not like we don't do that. Obviously, we have a little addition that we got from the Qumran scrolls that's been added in some translations, you know.
Did anyone else have that in theirs?
I have it in my mind.
Mine, it's in the NRSV, but it's not in the NIV. So. One other thing I wanted to call to attention is in verses 12 and 13. Remember those worthless people, those Belial or whatever, that were saying, you know, Belial, that were saying he can't save us. Well, now that Saul has successfully proven himself by delivering the people of Jabesh Gilead from the Ammonites, all the other people are saying, we got to put those people to death because they didn't believe in you, that you could do it.
Saul says, no.
And Saul says, yeah. And Saul says, God has brought deliverance to Israel, so we're not putting anybody to death today. which I think was a lot more gracious in that time period and in that context than we realize today.
Yeah, I think today, it's in that sentence.
Mhm.
What was that?
They're not gonna put anybody to death today.
Today. But again, I think you see the potential for him to be a good king,
Mhm.
right? I mean, that again, you know, early on, the potential makings that the power hasn't taken over
Mhm.
yet, and there's the potential there to be a good leader, and then things happen and he falls off the rails, but I think again, just different person at the beginning than he ends up being at the end, which we've seen countless times in history.
Oh, yeah. And current.
Yes.
Mhm. You could also read it as they said, can Saul save us? And now that people are saying, yeah, see, Saul can save us. So we got to put these guys to death. And Saul is saying, now hold up. The Lord saved us today.
Yeah. Because today.
It was
are the
this-
same.
Because it was the Spirit of God that came upon him. He knows he didn't do that by himself. He got that from God.
And those people are probably sitting back there saying, "Phew, I guess Saul can save us." Because he did.
Yeah.
Because the mob was gonna come after us. Well, right?
Or, well, you know, what I was saying is, was it Saul or was it God through Saul?
Well,
It's gone.
well, I
I think
know
that's what Saul-
it's God that
Yeah.
did it, but to those people that said, but certain worthless men said, how can this one deliver us? Well, he did deliver them in some respects, in that he said, there'll be no killing today.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. You can read it so many ways, which I think is really,
We just kind of proved his worth to everyone.
yeah. In the act of mercy, you're saying.
Right.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or comments or questions on these 3 chapters? 3 stories that we read? Beginnings of Saul. A lot of different stuff in here that I wanted to share, but now I'm trying to take which to share. Um, It's kind of funny in verse. And yeah. In verse 10, when the people of Jabesh say to the Ammonites, tomorrow we will come out to you. The Hebrew word yatsah that they use when, oh, tomorrow we will give ourselves up or we'll surrender or whatever. The Hebrew word yatsah means literally come out. It can mean, it can be used in the sense of surrender or give ourselves up, but it can also mean come out to do battle. So they gave kind of a ambiguous message to the Ammonites saying, It's, they interpreted it as tomorrow we'll surrender to you. When really they were coming out to do battle. That was kind of interesting. And then note that the people asked Samuel to put the worthless ones to death. But Saul's the one that responds and says, nobody's getting put to death. So there's a transfer of authority there, kind of from Samuel to Saul.
Did we ever hear of Nahash again? Does he just kind of fall by the wayside?
Not that I know of. I don't want to say no and then.
Well, it doesn't say that he was killed in the battle or
Right.
anything, so.
Somewhere, I don't have every word of scripture memorized, but I don't think so. In the book of Chronicles as well, okay. But it may be the same story because Chronicles it kind of
Yeah.
lines up with Samuel and Kings as just a retelling. I'll just kind of finish with this reflection from my commentary. Salvation is ultimately from God. It is God who truly saves. Samuel feared that in demanding a king, the people were rejecting the God who saves. At least at this moment in the story, Saul's response suggests that even a king can recognize God as the true source of all deliverance. For us, who live in a time that values individual self-sufficiency and puts increasing trust in technological solutions to problems, that is sometimes difficult to recognize our need for the salvation that comes from God. Israel was in a time of transition when it must have been tempted to leave God behind as part of the old order. But even in a story of new leadership and heroism, there must be recognition that God is the source of all genuine salvation in every age, old and new. Leave it there. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Next time, we will have chapters 12 and 13. Yeah. Chapter 14 is pretty long. Standalone. 12 and 13 next time. Right. Any prayer requests?